I love the nuance of behaviour and I love the science behind it, and I draw all of my backgrounds together and look for patterns because that's just what neurodivergent brains do, and I love it. So I'm going to talk about the core parallel between reactive dogs and traumatized humans, and I speak from obviously seeing a lot of domestic abuse in the police and noticing these patterns when a brain is in survival mode, and that brain is not species specific. Society expects traumatized beings, whether canine or human, to operate logically in a threat-laden environment. That is a neurological impossibility. So I want to talk about the myth of the good victim, and this is what we see with reactive dogs as well, but I also saw it with domestic abuse. If a reactive dog lunges, growls, barks, they are often punished by society and labelled as aggressive, even though this is fearful behaviour. If they shut down into a state of learned helplessness, they will be seen as well behaved, even though this is a horrible state to be in. Similarly, if a domestic abuse survivor eventually fights back, they are seen as the aggressor. And if they shut down, they're seen as uncooperative. What I see people do, especially institutions, but people in general, they will pathologize survival because they don't understand it. And I think this is where everybody needs more training, but particularly large organizations say, I don't know, the police that should be able to spot this. So normal survival mechanisms, fight, flight, freeze, fidget, are pathologized, and instead you will often see them punish the victim. And I want to talk about something that is so powerful that we use in dog training. We use it ethically, but you'll see aversive trainers use it unethically. And this is exactly what happens in a domestic abuse relationship. This is how people end up trauma bonded. You will have heard of trauma bond, but there's a neurological explanation, and it's the dopamine trap. Now, for somebody that's neurodivergent, that may be a hyper empath, they are going to be particularly at risk of ending up in a domestic abuse relationship because they are an open book. They come with their whole heart. They want to be loved. They may have never fit into societal norms. Therefore, they have learned that their worth is through being useful. So they offer themselves as a resource and to be helpful and to be useful and to be supportive, because just being them has never been enough. They're exploited with their honesty. If they come from a background, which is quite often the case, where they've grown up in a family dynamic that's very unhealthy, the intermittent reinforcement will feel like home. They won't see that as any different. People that have come from very healthy upbringings, they will say, well, why are they putting up with it? Why are they accepting this? Well, it's because that's normal to them. They haven't had a healthy benchmark. What's so dangerous about intermittent reinforcement? I'm going to explain it in scientific terms, because then you will give domestic abuse victims a break when you're saying, why do they not leave? You will also give reactive dogs a break when you say, why can't they just get over it? So we call it the slot machine effect because it's easier to explain. So unpredictability spikes dopamine, and dopamine, unfortunately, is very addictive. It's a very addictive neurochemical, and especially for somebody that's low in dopamine. So you pair the unpredictability and then the dopamine spike, which feels amazing, with a threat, which you see with aversive trainers, but you'll see in domestic abuse, and the highs and the lows create the addiction. So if you've ever been in a situation where you've been terrified and then afterwards the relief that you feel that floods your body, that relief feeling, in an abusive situation, you get that relief, and the combination of feeling that massive relief after a threat and then being rewarded with dopamine, with affection, with good things, is what creates the trauma bond. And so we see it with all species, human and dogs. And you're going to say, well, if it works for training, what's the problem with the dogs? Well, the problem is it's obviously unethical, but the threat activates the amygdala, which is the fight or flight part of your brain, which is a horrible state to be in, and it creates hypervigilance. So you will see in humans the people-pleasing behaviors because they are very hypervigilant, they're never fully settled, they're not relaxed. You'll see the same with dogs. So you will see pacing, you will see noise sensitivity, you will see a dog that is never fully settled, a dog that might be wary. It's not a nice way to live. The ultimate injustice for animals and for domestic abuse victims is that the perpetrator very often is a very performative, charismatic, narcissistic personality, and I just find that hyper empaths and narcissists end up together quite often because that hyper empath is an easy target for a character like this. And I want to draw your attention to the Gabby Petito case because she is the perfect example of how this played out.
Some days I have really bad OCD, and I was just cleaning and straightening up back of the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean down there. I don't know, we've just been fighting all morning, and he wouldn't let me in the car before. And then
why wouldn't he let you in the car? Because of your OCD?
Told me I needed to calm down.
Right now. So, tell me what's going on. Lucy just gets worked up sometimes, and I try and really distance myself from her, so like
So when the police responded to that argument, even though somebody had called in saying that they had seen Brian Laundrie physically assaulting Gabby, the police arrived and they all treated her as the aggressor because she came across, because she was in survival mode, as unstable.
He didn't hit me in the face.
And I hate that word. She came across as unstable, and Brian, on the other hand, came across as charismatic. He was joking, he was fist pumping with the police officer.
Come stand in the shade. Freaking hot. Yeah, I know the struggle. So you were talking to these officers, and I don't mean to butt in. I just felt kind of bad for you.
And he was the actual aggressor. But to him, being like that is just who he is because he was a narcissist. Whereas to Gabby, all she ever wanted is to be loved. And
Gabby Petito's heartbreaking love letter to her killer boyfriend.
It's not that she wanted that relationship to end, it's she wanted the abuse to stop. She loved Brian, and that's why she stayed with him, and she stayed for all the good times, hoping that the bad times would end. And she was the one that was pathologized, and ultimately they had a chance to save her then, and she ended up dead.
Laundrie would go on to murder Petito after a cross-country van trip in 2021, leaving her body in a national park before...
And I hate being that blunt, but this is what we see with the human world, with the dog world. And unfortunately, people are so easily fooled by the performative narcissist.